Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the welcome and the kind words. It is a pleasure to be back among old friends. Before I proceed, I would like, on behalf of the delegation, to extend our condolences to the government of the United States of America, the people of US, and especially to the families who have lost their loved ones and those who have been injured in Orlando incident. We sympathize with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the links between Zanzibar and the US go back a long way back. Just to remind you, in 1837, the United States of America opened its first diplomatic mission in sub-Sahara Africa. And the Zanzibar government also sent its representative to Washington. So from that time, 1837, our relations have been growing. And Zanzibar is one of the countries which enjoy very, very good relations with the US. And indeed, the people of Zanzibar would like to see to it that these relations become stronger by the day. Ladies and gentlemen, in our most recent struggle for democratic rights, we have indeed appreciated the US diplomatic support for Zanzibar and displeasure with the annulment of the election in October last year. The US has come firmly, very strongly, supporting the democracy in Tanzania and in Zanzibar. They are not supporting any political party, but they are supporting the democratic process. They want to ensure that you find democracy in Tanzania and especially in Zanzibar grows, and it becomes Zanzibar becomes a democratic country. We have a long way to go, and may I implore the Washington policy makers to stay the course, and for those who have not paid attention to the subject to get serious about our struggle for democracy. We are a small country, but what happens to us has a wider impact on the African continent and more globally. Whether in the positive sense of being a catalyst for economic development in the region, or in the negative sense that this enfranchisement is turning our island into a target for religious radicals. I want to say more about that. We have had, since the reintroduction of multipartyism in Tanzania, we have held 5 elections. The first one was in 1995, the year 2000, 2005, 2010, and the last one, 2015. And in all these elections, the people of Zanzibar voted CUF to form the government. But CUF has been persistently denied that right, which means the will of the people has not been respected at all. And if this trend continues, then we can smell a danger, because we have been trying all these times, all these years, to pacify our supporters. But you find, and looking for ways to have an agreement with the ruling party so that at least we respect the will of the people. We have had 3 agreements with the ruling party, only that to see to it that in the end, the ruling party does not respect the agreement. The danger is that you find if the young people who have no jobs, they're educated but no jobs, they are frustrated, and if they see that democracy cannot bring about change, then the danger is that they may think of finding alternative means. The last October, as I said, was last year on the 25th of October. In Zanzibar, along with the rest of Tanzania, people voted in good faith in elections, especially in Zanzibar, that were held as free and fair by the internal as well as international observer missions that were present, such as SADC, the Commonwealth, African Union, East African Community, European Union, the British, and the Americans. Results from polling units indicated a decisive victory for our party, CUF. But as we awaited the election to be called in our favor, a contingent of security forces surrounded the hotel where the verification of the results was underway, and the chairman of the Zanzibar Electoral Commission, Jecha Salim Jecha, an appointee of the ruling party, annulled the entire exercise. According to the Constitution of Zanzibar and the electoral law of Zanzibar, the chairman of the commission has no such powers. Even the commission has no such powers. And indeed, you find by 28th of October, when the chairman annulled the results, all those who were elected as members of the House of Representatives as well as councillors had already been given certificates that they were elected as representatives of those constituencies and wards. So you find that was an act which was against the Constitution, against the law. It was an arbitrary and illegal act, and was confirmed 2 weeks ago by the European Union Commission Observer Mission, which concluded that ZEC did not have the legal power to annul the elections and had never supplied any evidence of the alleged irregularities that were used to justify such an extraordinary and unprecedented step. Though our people, especially the youth, were very angry and frustrated, we continued to caution them to remain calm, even in the face of provocation by the security forces, because the facts were on our side, and we were confident that justice would prevail. While we were still engaged, after the annulment, I tried to meet the president of Zanzibar, who was also the candidate for the ruling party. He didn't respond to my calls. So I wrote a letter to him asking for a meeting with him so as to resolve the impasse. He accepted, but he said that we should aid other people. I wanted a one-to-one meeting with him. But he said we should involve other people. So in the end, we agreed that those who were the top leaders of the Zanzibar government, that is the president, first vice president, and second vice president, should be joined by the retired presidents of Zanzibar, Mzee Al Hassan Mwinyi, Dr. Salmin Amur, as well as Dr. Mani Abeid Karume. And while we were still engaged in dialogue with the ruling party, the ZEC chairman announced a rerun of the elections that would be held on March 20th this year. So on my part, I saw that there was no point of continuing with the talks. It was clear that the purpose of the new election would be to ensure a different outcome, that this time the ruling party would win. Unwilling to lend our name to such a fraud, we decided to boycott the election and called on our followers to follow suit. The election went ahead and the ruling party claimed a 91.4% victory. International observers refused to participate in the charade, but local and international journalists who were present said the polling areas were virtually empty. And we calculated that less than 15% of the electorate turned up to vote. The EU and the US declared that the elections were neither inclusive nor credible. The board of directors of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, a US government program, suspended its partnership with Tanzania and put $472 million worth of aid for electricity projects on hold. One could ask why we did not go to court. And I don't want to answer this question, but the answer was provided by the EU Observer Mission last week's, when it said, although the decision of ZEC chairman could have been appealed before the High Court, the judiciary in Zanzibar enjoys little confidence regarding its transparency and impartiality by most interlocutors, including political parties. The EU was told that judges would likely be under pressure to uphold the decision to nullify the elections. The perception regarding the likelihood of pressure on the judiciary was exacerbated by the manner in which the vice chairman of ZEC himself, a high court judge, was escorted by the security forces out of tallying center and not allowed to continue the tallying. In this context, and with further suspicions that a possible court case could remain unresolved for an indeterminate period, aggrieved parties excluded the possibility of seeking judicial redress. Why would Tanzania put the democratic credentials into dispute over the surrender of such a tiny sliver of power? We negotiated a pact with the ruling party CCM in 2010 to ensure that whichever party came out on top in Zanzibar, there would be a government of national unity. This was to forestall the violence of previous elections to ensure that no section of the community would feel shut out of a government. Some have speculated that it was simply a case of RPS, ruling party syndrome, and attributed it to the authoritarian streak in the system, which we are seeing in the mainland as well now. Only last week, for example, a young man was sentenced to 3 years or pay a fine for criticizing President Magufuli on Facebook. And the government banned all political rallies for all political parties, both in the mainland as well as in Zanzibar. Chadema's leaders have been pulled in for questioning, and they were locked in prison cells for some time. Myself was subjected to 3 hours of interrogation by 11 police officers 2 weeks ago. We are witnessing an unprecedented political crackdown in Tanzania, and my fear is that it will only get worse in the months ahead. But when it comes to Zanzibar, there is another deeper dimension. The ruling party in Dar es Salaam has expressed fear that a truly democratic Zanzibar would opt for self-determination outside of Tanzania. Secession is not our policy, as we have repeatedly made it clear. What we do seek is a redefinition of our relationship with the mainland, not to end the union, but to give us more freedom to rise to the potential as an island economy. For too long, Zanzibar has been economically and politically stifled by the hastily arranged marriage with Tanganyika, which was promoted by the Americans, the British in 1964, out of fear that Zanzibar was becoming an African Cuba. Even though President Julius Nyerere was a socialist, Tanzania was a staunch friend of the West during the Cold War, despite its ties to the Soviet Union and China. And up until today, is one of the major beneficiaries of development assistance from Washington. Zanzibar has fared less well in the 52 years since union. Our famed cosmopolitanism, our record of education excellence, and our status as a trading hub has been diminished. For decades, our economy has stagnated and our development indicators have declined. What we offered our people in the last October's election was the vision of unshackled future through our location alongside the great highway of the Indian Ocean and our deep connections with the Middle East and South Asia. We could become the Singapore of Africa. From our beautiful tropical beaches, you can almost see the coast of East Africa. History and geography ties us to the economically rising region and the inland markets and export trades of the Great Lakes region. A new and imaginative set of assumptions based on economic development could create a new partnership between Zanzibar and Tanganyika, benefit the Indian Ocean trading zone, and bring prosperity to East and Central Africa. Furthermore, Zanzibar is a cultural bridge between Africa and the Gulf, and with the inclusive and tolerant Islam that is practiced in Zanzibar, a successful and flourishing democracy in the islands could serve as a model to the rest of Muslim world in the Indian Ocean of the peaceful coexistence of democracy and Islam. Democracy is not just an abstract concept in Zanzibar. We are fighting for more than just the right to vote every 5 years. So what is our suggestions for a solution? We are open in the short term to a caretaker caretaker government of national unity in Zanzibar that should be set up as a matter of urgency, and we are prepared to go to new elections under the auspices of a neutral international body. Until that time, we have initiated a campaign of peaceful, non-violent resistance to mobilize our people and to make the statement that Zanzibar cannot return to business as usual. Our fear is that as long as democratic avenues remain closed, religious radicals will find an opening. Zanzibar has long-standing connections to other centers of Islamic militant activity, such as Somalia, parts of the east coast of Kenya, and of course, centers in the Middle East. Zanzibar is almost a textbook example of the conditions that lead societies to fall prey to violent extremism, poor economic governance, poverty and unemployment, especially among the youth, and a abiding sense of desperation and injustice. And all of this with no channels for political expression. That is why we refuse to extinguish hope. And that is why our struggle for democracy is about much more than Zanzibar. Thank you very much indeed.